Hi everyone, welcome to A Godly Home. Today's video is part of the collaboration going on at City Girl Homestead, hashtag through the years, and I am doing the 1800s for this collaboration. And I will be doing my part in 3 different videos. This is part 1, where I will show you where I got the information from. Part 2, I will be cooking the main meal. And part 3, I will be making the dessert. I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get started. So I started off looking through some various cookbooks from the 1800s, and it didn't take me very long to realize the average person, at least in the state of Maine, was not eating that way. The recipes seemed to be more for well-to-do families. I knew that the ingredients and stuff that they were using would not be available to the average person. So I decided what I needed was a book that was written in the 1800s of an actual real story to see what they were eating. And I wanted the story to be from the earlier 1800s. So I really lucked out when I stumbled upon this book, The Maine Woods, the writings of Henry D. Thoreau, and the story takes place in the 1840s. And I recognized the last name as a last name from my community, which was very interesting to me. Just before I bought the book, I decided to do a quick Google search, and I was able to find the book in digital format, and I could read it for free and screenshot some parts of it to share with you guys. So I was very excited. I quickly learned that my suspicions were correct. The people in Maine were not eating the things that I had found in the cookbooks. They were eating the things I assumed that they were eating, but I also learned a couple of things along the way of reading this that really shocked me about what they were eating. So let's get started, and I will show you a few excerpts from the book. So the story takes place in 1846. This guy from Massachusetts takes a train to Bangor, Maine, and then he makes his way up through my community and further north, making his way towards Mount Katahdin and the east branch of the Penobscot River. So he starts off in my county, Penobscot County, Maine, and he makes his way up through Aroostook County, Maine, which is the county that I grew up in. So this story was very factual for what life was like in my general area. So the first reference to food I found was this. He said, "We had dinner where, by the way, and even at breakfast as well as supper, at the public houses on this road, the front rank is composed of various kinds of sweet cakes in a continuous line." Then in the next part that he's talking about food, he's talking about what the loggers ate. And of course, my area was full of loggers. And he says, "The loggers' fare consists of tea, molasses, flour, pork, sometimes beef, and beans. A great proportion of the beans raised in Massachusetts find their market here. On expeditions, it is only hard bread and pork, often raw, slice upon slice, with tea or water, as the case may be." Now, I know when they refer to pork, they're referring to salt pork, because in other places in the book, they're talking about barrels of salt pork being what the average family had to eat in these parts. And I know when they're saying sometimes beef, if they had a farm, it might have been cows, but I read that they were really eating a lot of deer, moose, stuff like that. And I also read that they couldn't grow beans in Maine at that time. The summers were not long enough. That's why they were getting them out of Massachusetts. Expeditions referred to any trips that they took or any time that they would be out of the house overnight. And if they were going to be away from the house, the hard bread that they had was hardtack, which was just flour mixed with water and baked until it was rock hard, and then the salt pork. And tea. That's what really surprised me. I did not find any references of anybody drinking coffee. And I would have said that people in these parts drank coffee, but every reference was to them drinking tea and not coffee. And they were always drinking their tea sweetened with molasses. Now, the next account of food I found was this, and this is a great description. It says, "Supper was got before our eyes in the ample kitchen by the fire, which would have roasted an ox. Many whole logs, 4 feet long, were consumed to boil our tea kettle, birch or beech or maple, and the same summer and winter. There were piping hot wheaten cakes, the flour having been brought up the river in bateaux. No Indian bread for the upper part of Maine, it will be remembered, is a wheat country, and ham, eggs, and potatoes, and milk and cheese, the produce of the farm, and also shad and salmon, tea sweetened with molasses, and sweet cakes, in contradiction to the hot cakes not sweetened, the one white, the other yellow, to wind up with. Such we found was the prevailing fare, ordinary and extraordinarily, along this river. Mountain cranberries, stewed and sweetened, were the common dessert. Everything here was in profusion, and the best of its kind. Butter was in such plenty that it was commonly used before it was salted to grease boots with." Now, there was a couple of hints here. The fact that the cakes were wheaten cakes and they were unsweetened tells me that they were actually ploys. And I know in northern Maine, the people eat ploys even today. And it is not regular wheat, but it is buckwheat. And we will get into more about that in a bit. But I knew immediately that's what they were talking about. Whereas somebody who wasn't from Maine and read this, they would probably think they were just eating whole wheat pancakes. But that definitely was not the case. And there is the mention of those sweet cakes again. Okay, and the final excerpt that I want to read you that pertains to food is, "We had hot cakes for our supper even here, white as snowballs, but without butter, and the never-failing sweet cakes with which we filled our pockets, foreseeing that we should not soon meet with the like again. Such delicate puff-balls seemed a singular diet for backwoodsmen. There was also tea without milk, sweetened with molasses." Okay, so these excerpts gave me enough to go ahead and make my menu for this collaboration.